Hello, this is the podcast for Chapter 9, which is a continuation of the first P in marketing, product. And rather than dealing with product development and innovation, this chapter deals with product management once the innovation has been launched. As you can see here, all of the P's in the marketing mix have a sequence of steps in terms of how to manage that particular element of the marketing mix. This is an organizing slide for this chapter. Some basic terminology includes product line, product mix, and cannibalization. And as you can see, product lines for a specific company include each unique set of products that essentially offer the same type of way to satisfy customer needs. So for Gillette, they would have a line of deodorants, a line of shaving products such as razors, a line of toothbrushes, and of course they even offer pens. They have a product mix, which is comprised of all of the product lines as well as each of the items within that line. So if we look back again, product lines would be all of the offerings that satisfy a single need of customers, and the product mix is all the products that a firm offers for sale, and they have the width or the breadth is the same in terms of how many different product lines the firm offers. As we saw in Chapter 8, cannibalization essentially means when a company introduces a new product, to what extent will its new product eat into sales of an existing product that the company already offers. So for example, if Fig Newton is going to offer a line of fat-free Fig Newtons, to what extent will that new fat-free line cannibalize sales of the regular Fig Newton products? Companies must account for this in their forecast to make sure that the money they spend on introducing new products generates sufficient incremental revenue considering the effects of cannibalization. When companies introduce new products, they have a variety of objectives for doing so, as you see here. We covered the total quality movement in Chapter 1 under the marketing era in the history of marketing. And it's very important to recognize that all TQM objectives should be based on satisfying customer needs. Squeezing out zero defects, that essentially results in products or services that don't deliver customer needs, essentially is meeting production objectives without thinking about customers. There are quite a few standards that are involved in meeting quality guidelines, including ISO 9000, ISO 14000, which includes environmental sustainability, and Six Sigma methodologies that essentially try to focus on zero defects, or what is sometimes called 5 nines reliability, 99.999%. Product quality can be conveyed through a variety of different attributes, as you see on this slide. One of the most long-lived marketing concepts is the notion of the product life cycle. This is something that you would be expected to know on the major field test or the exit exam. And what you see here is the top line shows the sales trajectory of a firm's product over time, starting with 0, having a fairly flat rate during the introduction stage. Sales take off rapidly during the growth stage. Sales peak in the mature stage and then decline. The bottom curve is profits. Profits are negative at the introduction because the company is recouping R&D investments in product development, Profits peak during the growth stage, and the reason is that typically in the mature stage, competitors come into the market and the company has to spend quite a bit on marketing in order to maintain its position. As you can see on the next slide, the 4 stages, introduction, growth, maturity, and decline, are arrayed across the columns, and various ways to describe what happens at each of those stages is arrayed along the rows. It's important to recognize that pricing and promotion change over the course of the product life cycle, as does distribution, which is not actually mentioned on this particular slide. It's interesting that in the introductory stage of product marketing, oftentimes sales are oriented towards primary demand, which is sales for the product class as a whole. But as competitors come in, then the marketing communications tends to focus more on selective demand, which is demand for the company's individual brand. Each of these slides then describes what happens at each stage of the product life cycle. And as I mentioned, this is foundational to the marketing discipline to understand these 4 stages. Oftentimes the maturity stage can be extended by either finding new uses for existing products, such as Arm & Hammer has done with their baking soda, by making it both a cleanser for disposals, having boxes to put in the fridge or in closets to maintain freshness, making shoe powder to keep shoes fresh and clean. And also these companies can move into new markets, oftentimes international markets. During product decline, this is often called the end of life or EOL decision for products, and especially for tech companies, knowing when to EOL or end of life a product is critical as new generations of technology come along. For example, how long should a company like Microsoft continue to support older versions of Windows when it's currently releasing Windows 8 into the marketplace? As we learned in Chapter 8, the success rate of new products is actually quite low. 50% is considered to be a good success rate for new products, and it's interesting to study product failures. One of the most important decisions that product managers make is regarding the brand name. Brands from a legal perspective essentially are the name, term, symbol, or unique elements that uniquely identify a firm's products. From a marketing perspective, the brand is designed to form an emotional connection between the company and the customer. And this emotional connection is oftentimes based on a promise that the company makes to the customer about what its product stands for. And of course, we learned in positioning in Chapter 7 that most brands do have a brand personality that in some way is developed to match the customer identity of the target group of customers that the company is going after. Branding is critically important because although it costs a company quite a bit of money to establish a strong brand, the marginal returns once the company has created that can be quite large. Brands that have a well-known brand name actually have stronger financial performance. They sell at higher prices than companies with less well-known brand names. And when they introduce new products into the market, it takes less marketing expenditures to introduce those new brands. So, from a company's perspective, what we see is that to the extent a company's brand is well known, essentially that is highly correlated with market share. Higher prices mean that they command higher margins, they gain advertising efficiencies in introducing new products, as well as in brand extensions. For example, when Dole came out with Dole Popsicles. From a customer's perspective, we learned in Chapter 5 that customers frequently rely on brands as a heuristic to make a product purchase, especially in complicated product categories, for example, cold medicines or electronics. These decision heuristics can create a safe purchase for customers. We see this in high technology where the phrase is nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. IBM might not be the best, it might not be the cheapest, but certainly it's considered safe. Brand equity essentially is the brand's value to the organization, and for those of you in accounting, what you know is that when a company is sold, essentially the goodwill on the books, the difference between the price paid and the asset value of the company's tangible assets, is noted as goodwill or brand equity. One of the most important aspects of creating a brand is brand storytelling. Brand storytelling we have seen at the University of Montana with the Thrive campaign, and we've also seen brand storytelling with Microsoft in terms of the way they release the public relations about their brands. Sub-branding essentially means creating a secondary brand within a product line. So if we talk about Apple, they have the iPod. If we talk about Microsoft, they have Xbox, they have Windows. These are sub-brands that essentially are different platforms that a company offers in the marketplace. Good brand names essentially are used to portray the company's image, and oftentimes brand names should describe what the product does or the benefits that it offers to customers. It should be easy for customers to say, spell, read, and remember. And so the brand name Allianz, A-L-L-I-A-N-Z, can be confusing to some customers. Also, good brand names should fit the target market. For example, in Spanish, Nova means no-go, and so the name of the Nova car essentially meant no-go, and it failed, of course, in Mexico. It's also important to know that there are legal requirements for branding, and we do cover these when we talk about trademark law. Trademarks are essentially the legal term for the brand name, the brand symbols, and even the tagline. Trademarks are legally registered, and the idea is to prevent unscrupulous competitors from offering counterfeits in the marketplace. Brands that are successful essentially follow a set of rules or strategies. And most importantly, successful brands deliver important benefits to customers. They maintain their relevance over time. For example, we see with Taco Bell that their target market is in the 20s. And even though that company is 50 years old, they try to release new products that appeal to the newest generation of customers on a regular basis. Pricing should be based on customer perceptions of value, which are the benefits of the brand divided by the price that the customer pays. Consistency essentially means a good fit between the company and the target market and what the customer expects. The brand portfolio essentially refers to the brand hierarchy: Microsoft, Windows, Windows 7. Brand activities help to coordinate marketing activities to be focused on the brand. Good brands know what the emotional connection is with customers, and all employees within a company are responsible for delivering that promise to customers. It's not just the marketing department, it's customer service personnel as well. Two different brand strategies are individual brands versus family brands. Individual brands are when a company does not put a corporate or umbrella brand on its individual products. This would be an example of Procter & Gamble, whose products are named Tide, Crest, Pampers. These are more expensive to introduce because the company doesn't have the legacy of one family or umbrella brand. On the other hand, a family or umbrella brand such as that which Dole uses means that new products are less expensive to introduce because we all know what the Dole name means. But if one of those new products fails, it can actually create a backlash against the other products in the family brand. Two other types of branding strategies are what are referred to as national versus store brands. National brands essentially are manufacturers' brands such as Heinz ketchup or Keebler cookies. Store brands are private label brands that are carried by individual stores. For example, Albertsons store brand is Essentia. Safeway's store brand is Safeway Select. Costco's store brand is Kirkland. And what's interesting about national versus store brands is that oftentimes, because retailers are not in the business of manufacturing, they have to make decisions of where they will actually source their store brand products. And surprisingly, it is often the national manufacturers who create the store brands, essentially manufacturing their competitors' goods for them. So the logical question is, why would a manufacturer actually manufacture its competitors' private label products for them? The margin picture for retailers is such that they actually make a higher margin on their private label brands because even though they cost less for the customer to purchase, they cost significantly less for the store to actually buy. Whereas national brands customers pay more, but the retailers pay quite a bit more to actually buy those into the store. Licensing essentially is when one company gives another company the right to use their brand name for a specific purpose. For example, we see licensing frequently in the high-tech market where companies might want to license their operating systems for other companies to use. Co-branding combines two brands, and we see this frequently, for example, when we see Jack Daniel's is being used in barbecue sauce at the store, for example. A unique form of co-branding is when a company like Intel advertises to end users, even though customers never buy an Intel chip, they only buy computers that the chip is in. That is called ingredient branding. As with all of our marketing tools, it's very important to measure the return that a company gets from its branding strategies. And there are many different metrics that can be used to assess the effectiveness of branding, as you see here. This will end the podcast for the first set of Chapter 9.